Hi, this is the Black Bear Prepper, and today we're going to be talking about my fall stove kit. I love stoves, but this is definitely my kit I use for the fall. And what we're really going to be talking about today is the stove I picked to go in my kit. The Optimus Vega stove. This is a great stove for this type of a situation because it is a canister, remote canister stove that is designed to use all the way up until about 0 degrees. And it does work for that. Okay? So let's see what's in our kit here real quick here. So first of all, this is the Primus pot that I use, the 1.8 liter pot. You can get these right now. I love this guy. These do a great job. Does it fit perfectly on there? No, it's pretty close though. I mean, it basically gets down there. That's why we use a bag. We put it in a bag just like we do with all of our other stoves. Now, if you've watched our video on what I use for my summer stove, I use the Primus Express. And for my winter stove, which will never go away even though I have something like this, I run the Dragonflies with the UFO burner on them, which really works well. Okay? So let's kind of get into what's in the kit here. So, lid. I keep a pot grabber. The new pot does not need that. It kind of comes with the handles already built onto it. But the pots last forever, and I bought this one, I didn't buy it yesterday. So I bought it like 10 years ago. I put a spork in there, something to grab onto. Windscreen. That is a big advantage to these stoves. Because the canister is away from the burner, I don't have to worry about overheating the canisters and having them explode. So I'm able to use a windscreen. Now you can use whatever kind of windscreen you want, but it does, a little windscreen is a good idea. I have 2 of the smaller canisters, the little 110 grammers. They're great at this size. What I like is if one leaks, I still have another canister. And for the most of the use I'm going to be doing in the upright position, not in 4-season mode, these canisters last forever. About an hour on each one of these canisters. So that's kind of an advantage. If you're one of the guys that likes the bigger canisters, you're going into the snow, I definitely recommend taking the bigger canister. And yes, the bigger canister does fit in there also. Now, this stove does not come with a piezo igniter. So I carry one of the little MSR piezo igniters. Do they work every time? No, so I definitely recommend having matches with you. We'll show you when we go to the cold version. So something like that. Just take it. And then look at how small this stove folds up into. It is in the very bottom of this pan. Pull it out. Put our pot off to the side. The other nice thing is this one works really, really well with about an 8-inch pot if you're going to do pancakes or fry eggs or whatever you want to do. If you want to actually cook on it, a great stove. Very stable. Why is it stable? Because it has one of the best pot systems I've ever seen on a stove. So we've got this guy here, it folds open. Why is it so cool? Because all of our pot stabilizers are angled. And that may be a little hard to see on camera there, but they're actually angled down into the center. I can take one of the little Snow Peak cups and boil water on the Snow Peak cups. I can use a little bigger guy, put it on there. Stable as all get out because it's actually being held in from gravity. Really great idea. Super stable because it is so low too. That's the problem. You put a big giant pot on a stove that's this far off the ground and a top, a top canister mounted stove, and it tends to be very, very tippy. So that is a huge advantage here. I've even put my full 3-liter pot on top of here. It does max it out to the outer points and is not as stable as my Dragonfly, but it does it. And with a flat bottom stove, works just fine too. So definitely those kind of things. What is nice is that I really like that 1.8 liter pot size. I can still melt snow in here if I'm in an area like that. I can do a liter of boil in here. Keep in mind, if you have a 1 liter pot, that does not mean you can boil 1 liter of water. That means it takes about another 1.5 liters, or about another half a liter at least, to be able to boil in that size. So for 1 liter of water, you really need about 1.5 liters of volume of your pot. So keep that in mind. Okay, so what does the stove weigh? So this is going to be in grams, so in grams, the stove, let's fold it up here, put it on our scale here. Ooh, whoops, I can get it to stay on there. So we're about 178 grams, and then adding on the igniter, because I feel that all of your top mounted stoves are going to have igniter on them, at least the decent ones. We're about 191, okay, so let's switch it to our ounces. We're about 6.7 ounces. Without the igniter, we're 6.25 ounces. So a very light stove, about 2 ounces heavier than my regular stove configuration. Okay, so we fold it out, we got our big pot supports here. What are the advantages of this stove? Why would I pick this over just a top mounted stove? We got to the first one. There's 3 main things. Pot stability. Bigger pots mount on here very, very well. As I go up into the winter, I'm going to be melting a lot more snow. I'm going to have bigger groups. This is definitely going to be an advantage. Okay? 2, we have the burner rail here that goes over, or the burner tube that goes over the burner. This is going to allow it to work in 4-season or upside down canister mode. Okay? And third, we have the ability to flip out legs and be able to flip our canister over into 4-season mode, and it's already on there. I really like this over some of the, I love MSR, don't get me wrong. We're going to be talking about the MSR remote canister stove, the universal, here in the next few days. But this particular one does not, a little plastic attachment and all those other things. It's a metal flip out stand. So pop it out, boom, boom, done. Okay? I really like that feature. Okay, so why do I like that feature? What makes that an advantage? Okay, so running in this configuration right here with the canister on top. So if we run the canister on top of the stove, with one of the smaller canisters, we ran 3 of these guys. We got about an hour and 12 minutes off of one of these canisters in this standard style. So amazing efficiency. And I think that's due to that wrap over design. Being super light, it really does replace a bigger, heavier stove, and being very, very light is in the middle of these 2 items here. Now, an hour and 12 minutes on the small canister. We got boil time starting out at about 1 minute and 35 seconds. At about 30 minutes, we were getting boil times of 2 cups at about 3 minutes and 18 seconds. And finally, our last boil time that we were able to get was at 60 minutes. And that was 4 minutes and 48 seconds. So the canister, as it gets colder, becomes much, much less efficient. Okay? So that is a problem. In the snow, as it gets cold, you'll see the canisters actually freeze up, and they will just not run for large amounts of continuous boil. Some people go, oh, I make coffee or something like that. And that's a couple minute procedure, and then they turn off the stove. They're not using that stove continuously for an hour. We do in the snow. We're out there. That is our primary form of getting water. So we definitely want to have that. The ability to be able to put a windscreen on here also, being a remote canister stove, is a big advantage. You cannot put a windscreen on a stove that is on a top-mounted canister. So if I put the stove on top of the canister, because it will heat up the canister, and that can cause the canister to actually explode. Now, why wouldn't I just run it in the full power setting all the time? Rolling over here. The reason I would not do that is because as soon as you do that, you cut your efficiency in about half. So we got right around 32 minutes of boil time in the upside down mode, running the 110 gram canisters from MSR, and we were getting boil times with these were liter boil times, and we decided we had to do them every 5 minutes. We did a test. It didn't go very well because we cranked the stove all the way up like we did in the first test, and we were getting constant flame ups. You cannot run it wide open in the liquid fuel mode or upside down mode. So we were getting boil times starting in about 2.5 minutes, or about 2 minutes 25 seconds, and ending up at about the 25-minute range at about 3 minutes and 5 seconds. So a very continuous very consistent boil times. At the very end, it's useless. For the last, 5 to 10 minutes, it's pretty much useless, where it's just basically getting water warm. So don't waste the fuel. It's still melting snow. It's just going to take a long time. So let's get this guy fired up. So if we want to run it in the regular mode, we just go ahead and we crank her on. Okay, now the way these guys work, you kind of have to put them over, let it fill full of gas, and then hit the button. I have really good flame control here once it's fired up. So I'm able to just basically have a really nice simmer that I can use here. And like I said, if I'm using that on a fry pan, that's a huge advantage. So usually when we have, at least in areas, we're in California here, we have most of our problems with cooking in the cold is at night. During the daytime, it usually warms up enough to where you could probably even run it in this while you're cooking. You do lose your simmering ability when you flip it into the other mode. So you'll see here, I can crank this guy all the way up, and it is a amazing burner for short periods of time. Heat up water, and you're actually going to see the stove turn red here. The actual areas where the flame is hitting is bright red. Now, when I flip it into the upside down mode, the most important thing you do is do not crank this stove all the way up. You're going to get a lot of yellow flames, a lot of craziness going on. We're going to flip it over and you'll hear it kick right up. It about doubles the power of the stove. Now, what I'm going to do is I turn it until I can't hear it doing anything else. So it's not, I didn't hear the flame get any more powerful. And what that allows me to do is know that's about as much as I need to open it up. Any more than that, and I'm going to get that liquid fuel burning through it, a lot of spittering, sputtering, and I'm getting 2-foot flames on here. But I'll tell you right now, it rocks at this speed. You're really not getting an advantage turning it up any higher, except burning through the canister about twice as fast. So, and you'll hear it right there. It's just letting all the last little bit of fuel roll through here. So that liquid fuel that's still in the stove, that's going to be something that's going to allow it to burn all the way down. Now, we had 3 bottles we went through to test with. The second bottle, like I said, we cranked it all the way up. We got about 20 minutes really of power, and the rest of it just went out. It just wasn't efficient at all. It basically, even after about 10 minutes, the flame went down so low that it was just kind of sputtering through to warm up a little bit. You're warming water. You're not even really doing anything. So definitely putting in that's the biggest thing I've seen. Making sure that if you're in that mode, you're just cranking it up enough to let the fuel run through and go for that. Just enough to where you hear the flame go all the way up, and then you keep turning and it's not going any farther, and just keep it right there. If the flame's not getting any bigger, just leave the burner there. Now what I'm going to have my helper do here is he's going to grab me a frozen canister, and we're really going to get, I think, to see the advantage of this feature. So we've got a canister, not the snow by any means, but really it's the canister that's cold, not the stove. So having the outside temperature cold or not really doesn't have a big deal to do with it. So we've got a canister that's been in the freezer at 0 degrees. I keep my freezers at 0 degrees. And you'll hear we didn't even get a spurt out of it. So I'm hoping we're going to get it to light. And so this will be the problem here. Now I do recommend when you're in this kind of it's this cold, to go ahead and use matches. You will not have the ability to really get this stove to do much. Alright, now you saw that canister. This is wide open. Everything it's got. As you can imagine, you bring this into the snow, it's been setting out overnight, you wake up to cook your breakfast, this is going to be nothing. Okay, now here's what we do. So we're in our full size. I'm going to turn it, oh, let's light it again. Sorry, I got it all the way down. Like I said, we lose our ability to simmer when it gets cold. So we're going to go ahead and get this guy lit. Now, because it does have the burner tube, that's going to help. And you'll see it as it gets warmer. But we're going to crank this guy over. and you are going to see liquid fuel dump into the stove. And in a matter of seconds, you're going to see the stove really perform much, much better as it heats up that burner tube and starts burning some of that fuel that's internally in there. Does that mean we don't want to keep the canisters as warm as we can? So if we can, we want to bring the canisters in at night and really improve that burning. But as it gets going here, we're going to see more and more liquid dump into the tube. And it's going to take a second because we had that cold fuel to go through. But now you're actually starting to see this canister actually heat up the metal red hot. And we're going to just get hotter and hotter here as we go along. And you're already feeling a very hot flame. Is this as good as a white gas stove? No! But maybe you're on the PCT and you're traveling over a couple big mountains, or somewhere where you're up in high altitude and you need that advantage. Keep the canisters as warm as you can. Keep your hands on them. That's going to help them even increase even more. You'd be surprised just putting your hand around the canister to get it started. There's a lot of people that dip them in water, they put hand warmers on them, all kinds of things. But you're going to notice this canister is going to get more and more powerful as we get going. Now, the one thing I will tell you, in any of these situations, especially with white gas or liquid fuel stoves, run them with the canister, upside down, but run it continuously. The more you run it, the more powerful the stove's going to get. Now, this canister was almost empty. That's why I picked this canister. This canister would have been useless in the regular form. Right now, we are getting red hot flames coming out of here. This is about how the stove runs when it's been running, this sound-wise, when it's been running for about, 15 minutes. So it's not as loud as it is originally, because the pressure is less, but we have an actual flame that is burning my hand, 2 foot above there. That is a huge, huge advantage. And we're actually seeing the red, which we did not see originally. So, this is the, Vega stove from Optimus. And we'll let it crank all the way down. Now notice, I've actually turned the stove off and it's still burning off the liquid fuel that's still in the lines. So, just kind of think about that. But that sucker is still burning, working great, has awesome pot stability, lightweight. You're not really losing anything picking this stove over a canister mounted stove, but you do get the pot stability, the ability to go in that 4-season mode. Just remember to bring double the amount of canisters you normally would if you're going to run it in that inverted mode. The reason is because they're 50% less efficient, but also another reason